So welcome to the May DFW Austin San Antonio Greater Texas Tug. We are super excited for another great meeting today and are very happy that each of you all are taking some time out of your afternoons to join us. My name is Rachel Mason, and I am with Technion Data Solutions, who along with Zeomatrix helps sponsor this tug. And I have the privilege once again of being your host today. So happy to be here. And a quick shout out that I want to give to this tug's advisory council who helps plan and put together all of our meetings. We meet bi-monthly to discuss how we can better support and serve this community. So this would not be possible without you guys. And I want to give special shout out to PJ, Chris, Kobe, Iman, Colin, John, Homer, Amy, and James. So thank you guys. And like we usually do, I'd love to see where everyone is tuning in from. So if you could take just a moment to throw up your city, state, or country in the chat. Be curious to know where everyone is coming in from. And a couple housekeeping and announcements that I want to go over. As you can see, we are using Zoom meeting for this tug, so feel free to turn your cameras on so we can see your beautiful faces. And I encourage you to utilize the chat to connect with fellow Tableau users and stick around because we're going to be doing some networking breakout sessions today as well. Additionally, we are recording today's meeting and the recording will be emailed to you in the next day or so. Some announcements that are coming up. Data Dev Day is next Thursday, May 20th. And this is a great day to learn tips for Tableau admins, such as personal access tokens, metadata API, a webhook. And you can find more details about this at tableau.com/datadevday. And our lovely advisory council member Amy Wu is speaking at this. So snaps to Amy. We are looking forward to it. And also mark your calendar for the next tug. We are looking at the date of June 17th, and more details will be coming shortly for that. And lastly, don't forget to fill out our post-event survey. We added a new question to the end of this survey this time that's asking around when you'd be comfortable with having tugs in person again. So just want to get some feedback from you guys around that. So please take just a moment to fill that out post-event. On today's agenda, we have an awesome guest speaker who I'll introduce in just a moment. He's doing this and he's being humble, but so we have an awesome guest speaker. After he presents, we're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to do some quick Q&A. And then after that, we're going to move into our networking breakout sessions, which I'll explain those a little bit later. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kevin Flerlage. Kevin has 15 years of professional experience in data analytics and is genuinely passionate about data. He is a 2-time Tableau Zen Master and works as the manager of business intelligence at Unifold Recovery Decision Science, a financial services and technology company led by 5-time Zen Master Jeff Schaefer. Kevin is also a Tableau Public Ambassador and has 4 Iron Viz top 10 finishes and is the second most favorited author on Tableau Public. Kevin is also an active member of the Tableau community, and we are super excited to have you here today, Kevin. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here. And can you see my slides okay?
Yep, looks good.
All right. All right. So before we even get started, I got some warnings to go over. First off, I'm in my house. I have 2 children that don't like each other all that much half the time. So just warning you that we might hear some arguments in the background, and I'm kind of in this open space, so we might have some passerbys as well. So the other thing is I've been sick all week, and what came with that was a pretty nagging cough. So I've got 6 unwrapped cough drops right here ready to go. But if for some reason I disappear from the screen and I go on mute, I'm probably having a little bit of a coughing fit. So just bear with me, and I hope we can get through. If this happened 2 days ago, we would have been in real bad shape, but things seem to be getting better. All right, so that's me. She already introduced me. Thanks, Rachel. Very nice introduction. You may know me from my brother, or from the two of us together. So I am on the left-hand side, and I got this little Zoom thing I want to get out of the way, but I'm on the left-hand side. Ken, my identical twin brother, Ken, is on the right-hand side. We run FlerlageTwins.com together. We're both Tableau Zen masters. He's been using Tableau a little longer than me, so he is a 4-time Zen. I'm a 2-time Zen. And yes, pretty darn cool to be identical twin brother Zen masters. And if you're not aware what a Zen master is, it is something, it is an official title. It's something that Tableau presents for people that are masters, collaborators, teachers. And I think right now, including the Hall of Fame, there are 53, 54 of them in the world. So a great honor. So Ken and I often get the question, we're identical twins, how alike are we? Well, I can try to answer some pieces of that. So let's start off where we live. I live in Burlington, Kentucky, which is about 20 minutes outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. Ken, years ago, moved up to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is 20 minutes outside of absolutely nothing. There's nothing up there, maybe some cow pastures or something like that. But he chased a girl 20 years ago and is still married to her. So what we like to visualize in our personal time. So Ken likes to look at topics like religion, war, endangered species, and politics, where I tend to tackle the really tough subjects like Adam Sandler, video games, cartoons, and even hot dog eating competitions. Gosh, this is like my second visit, and it was so much fun. This guy ate like 70 hot dogs in 10 minutes. I find that intriguing. But the biggest question people get is, who's the best at this data viz thing? Well, we can kind of look at some data to show who's the best. So if you're not aware, this is something called the I can never say this word, Cerebro project. This is done by Josh Tapley, where he's scraped the authors on Tableau Public, and he's kind of broken down some statistics from them. So we can zoom in here and look at the authors by the number of followers they have. So we have Andy Kriebel at the top. Andy Kriebel, if you're aware, probably tops every one of these lists. But I'm in third. Hey, that's pretty cool. And Ken, a distant 6th. So pretty lame, Ken. And then we could look at the number of favorites. So we have the breakdown by number of favorites on Tableau Public. So Andy Kriebel again. I'm in second. Ken's in third. Well, actually, Ken just passed me. So now I'm in third. He's in second, and he's got a bunch of stuff in the works, so he's probably going to stay there for a while. So darn Ken. All right, truth. Truth is Ken was a Tableau Zen master before I even downloaded Tableau. So Ken was a DBA prior to that. Ken's better than me at this stuff. I'll give him that. He's better all around than me. And I owe a lot to him. He really got me doing this and into it, and it really changed the course of my career and my life as well. So a big thank you to Ken in all seriousness, even though I joke about these being better than him. All right, the real introduction, I think Rachel pretty much covered it, but I'm Zen Master and a Tableau Public Ambassador. That second goes to third now. I also help lead the Cincinnati Tug. We haven't done any virtual events, but last year I helped do the Data Fam Community Jam. If people were involved in that, it was backed by Tableau, and we had a couple events. We had over 1,000 people on. So it was really this big push for virtual when the pandemic first started. So, all right. So today we're going to be running through, we're going to kind of do 2 sections. We're going to do some speed tipping. I don't know how speedy it'll be, but we'll do some speed tipping, and then we'll do some tips that you never saw coming. What's that all about? Well, we'll have to wait to kind of break down what that actually means. So let's get to it. I'm going to flip over to Tableau, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. I'm going to touch on some tips and some tricks, some new features, and just some weird things that you may not knew you could do. So we are going to start with a new feature. New feature came out, I think, in 2020.3. It's the in operator. So you might be familiar with the inner operator if you're a SQL guy, but it's now in Tableau. So we're going to look at this chart and we're going to use the inner operator. So what I have is just subcategory, and I've got a few of these highlighted as problems and not problems. Now, maybe they're problem areas that I just want to keep my eye on as a manager or something like that. And I did that with a simple case statement. So, okay, great. First tip, if you didn't know, you can press Control and use your mouse scroll to scroll into a calculation. It's great for presentations. It's great for people like me that need readers. So you can scroll in. That's really handy. So I want to take this case statement. I'm going to flip it over to to use the in operator. So instead of just deleting this, I want to comment it out, right? So let's just comment this out. And yeah, this all of a sudden this is taking forever. This is hard to watch on my presentation. Well, if you didn't know, Tableau also just introduced block comments. So if you're a SQL person, you know that you can open the block and close the block with a block comment. Well, you can do that in Tableau now. So let's get rid of this. So I can start getting rid of this by just hitting delete, but there's another trick. You can press Shift and I'll use my cursor to move over. But if I hold Shift and then press Alt, I wish you could see my keyboard, I can highlight down as well. So that's a cool little trick. So we can delete that all in one big hit instead of going to each line hitting comment. So now let's use our block comment to comment those out. So I think I got like 5 tips in already. So hopefully somebody's counting. And now we're going to just swap this out to be an in operator instead of a case statement. So let's say if subcategory, and here's the in statement. So instead of doing case subcategory when this, we can just say if it's in art machines, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Fix that. Then problem, what did I say, concern, if I can type, all right, so we swapped out this case statement for an in operator, hit OK. It's going to function exactly the same way, except we're going to lose that one that I dropped out. So in operator, nice little quick way to remove some syntax from your calculations. I use it all the time. All right, fixed LODs. So fixed LODs, I use them in pretty much every visualization. Here's a very common use case for a fixed LOD. We may want to get the max month in our data. So maybe we want to always know what that last month is. In this case, we can see what that is, but we want to use it in a calculation. And a row level calculation, we might want a fixed LOD that shows December 2018 on every single row. So we might create a very simple calculation that says fixed on this entire data set. So we want it for the entire data. So fixed on the entire data set, give me the max of the order date. So one little thing that I always recommend is that you can just drag those in there when you're creating those calculations. So you don't have to type out the date, trunk, month, order date. So if I use that calculation, throw it up on, say, rows, we're going to get that annoying thing that we always get where it went to year. Well, okay, then I'm going to change it to month, and then it goes continuous, and then I got to change it to discrete. And then we get the December 2018. Well, that's great, but if I actually right-click on drag on this, we get a bunch of these options. And if I just click this discrete one, it's going to give me the value the format that I like. So, all right. So now we have this very simple fixed LOD that says, all right, December 8, 2018 is the max date in our data. I like to call this fixed LOD, hold the fixed, because anytime you're fixing, you're using a fixed LOD that fixed on the entire data set, you don't even need this. I'm not sure it really matters. Not going to save you much time, but it's pretty cool. You can just remove that altogether. So, all right, staying in the theme of fixed LODs, the new version 2021.1 allows you to create quick LODs. So let's just look, we've got a simple table looking at category, subcategory, and sales. Let's say that we wanted to summarize using a fixed LOD, the sum of sales at the category level. So we wanted the sum of sales for furniture, office supplies, and technology. We could write a fixed LOD to do that, or we can now use the quick fixed LODs. How do I do that? I just click and hold. It only works with one dimension, so in one measure. So if I click the measure and I click category and I hold control, I can right click, create LOD calculation. And you see what it does, fixed on category, sum of sales. Great. Hit OK on that. And there it is, populated. We'll throw that on our view. We see sum of sales. If you do this enough, you just know that that 742,000 figure is correct. You can also drag it. If we take sales and drag, you know what it normally wants to do. It wants to change it to a dimension. But again, if I hold the control key and drag it, excuse me, drag it on the category, you'll see in a moment, it creates this other fixed LOD. Same as thing that we just did. Fixed on category, sum of sales, and drop it on the view and you can confirm that it's the correct number. So 2 different ways to create quick LODs in the new version of Tableau 2021.1. All right, order of operations. Order of operations are some of my favorite tips because we can really kind of bend Tableau and make it do the things that we want it to do, or make it do the things or fix some of the things that it's doing that we don't want it to do in the first place, right? So we do this really, really often with fixed LODs. We were just talking about fixed LODs. Since fixed LODs are calculated at this level and dimension filters are calculated at this level, really probably 95% of what we do with the order of operations is we change these dimension filters to context filters to the data, and then you create fixed LD. There are certainly cases where you want the dimension filter to happen after the fixed LD, but this is a really common use case for kind of tweaking with the order of operations. Well, there's lots of other cool ways that you can mess with the order of operations. And I got everybody's picture here in the way, so I'm gonna move it. So I'm gonna kind of harp on that where I was actually had more favorites than Ken. And this is looking at that data I just showed before from Josh Tapley, where it shows most favorite authors on Tableau Public. So Andy Kriebel up here, this data is outdated, but I refuse to update it and show Ken above me. So me in second, my brother in third, Adam McKinney of my company. So he's number 6. So you got me here and Jeff here. I'm kind of curious where 2 of my colleagues are sitting. So you may know them. They run a website called Her Data. It's Danushki De Libera and Jennifer Dulles. They're both pretty active. So if I want to know where they ranked, okay, my first thought might be, well, I'll just start to filter on them. So let's check everybody and let's find me first. And this is just a subset. There's more Kevins in this full data, obviously. We got Jeff, Danushki, and Jennifer. And now we can, wait a minute. Now it's saying that I'm first and Jeff second, but we knew I was second and he was 6th and Jennifer's 3rd. You guys see what's happening is if we, I gotta move the pictures out of the way. Let's figure out how I get rid of these pictures altogether. But so if I go back to the order of operations, we'll see what's happening. We've got, and I guess I should have clarified, this number is using a rank table calculation. So it's just ranking the values. So this table calculation is happening at this level of the order of operations, but then I have a dimension filter up here. So what's happening is I'm filtering down the data to just these 4 values, and then it's ranking them. So it's ranking these 1 to 4. That makes sense. So how might I rank? How might I do this? Let me. That's going to prove annoying, that little picture all day long. How can I filter this and maintain this same rank? Well, we can do that by tricking the order of operations. I'm going to go back here and look at this order of operations. We have our table calculations happening here. We can use what we call a table calc filter to filter after the table calc computes. How we're going to do that is we're going to use a lookup function. You may have used a lookup function to do year over year or month over month. Lookup function is usually used to look up a value in a previous row. For example, if I use the lookup -1 on Ken Flerlage, it would yield this 6786 value for Kevin. Or if I used the +1 on Ken, it would go to Adam McCann. So it's usually to look up a previous row or a next row or the previous 2 rows. We're going to use it to do something a little bit different. We're going to, first off, the syntax is lookup, and we're going to just, it needs to be an aggregate. So we're going to put the min in front of the profile name. And instead of looking back a row or plus a row, we're just going to go 0. And I did something silly there. So what this is going to do is just going to look up the same profile name, but it's going to put it into a table calculation format. So let's add this to the filter. We'll hit all for now. And now I'll show these. And one, check them. And as I start to pull in these names, Kevin, Jeff, Danushki. Probably should have put these in a group or something, save me some time, but. And now we can see that that rank is maintained. Me at 2, Jeff at 6, Jennifer Dawes at 75, and Danushki at 122. And now I've answered the question I want to know. Where did Jennifer and Danushki sit? They're up at 75 and 122. And that's all because we've tricked the table, the order of operations to rank them and then filter them after that. I like to use a very similar technique when I'm looking at year-over-year bands or big numbers. So what if I want to show for the most recent year, we're just going to pretend this is 2021. And what if I wanted to show this as a band, just this figure by itself alone as a year-over-year band that were 20%, our sales was 20% higher than they were last year. The kind of normal thing that people tend to do is, okay, well, I'll just start filtering out the previous years. So I can certainly filter out 2016, 2017, 2018, and then boom, what happened? We lose that table calc, that difference table calc, right? The reason is that table calc needs this 2018 value to actually calculate it. It needs this sales value, it needs this sales value to be able to calculate the percent change. So we can use that sort of table calc filter to kind of trick this in the same way. This time I'm going to use a different calculation. We could probably use the lookup function, but then you'd have to specify what you're looking up, and I don't really want to do that. What I really want is the most recent year. So I'm going to set this to all, and I'm going to use the last function. You see, my first warning just had a kid run by. They can't help themselves. So we're going to use the last function. The last function is sort of like index. If you use index, that last is going to count from the last row backwards, starting at 0. So last would be 0 for 2019, 1 for 2018, 2 for 2017, etc. So if I set this calculation of last equals 0, all that's telling me is give me the last row. And last is a table calculation. So if I put this last onto my filter and set it to true, last equals 0 set to true, we have this row. This value is retained because I'm not actually filtering. The table calculation is happening before the filter, right? So now we have this number. All I have to do is get sales off of there, off my view, and then we can show this header, and we have this year-over-year band just by tricking the order of operations. So nice little trick I use quite often. All right, so this is something I learned from Jeff Schaefer, and he hates clutter. I hate clutter too, and this actually feels not too bad, but there is definitely some clutter. There's some axis rulers, there's lots of bars, lots of colors. Well, maybe not lots of colors, a couple different colors. And an axis, normally I'd probably label the end of the bars, but I've got an axis here. What if I just want to clean this up a little bit? What if I want to get rid of the 0 mark? We obviously know this is 0, right? Let's just get rid of the 0 mark. This is really easy to do. Some people might just double click on this axis and, totally cheat and set it to 1 or something, and then it shifts that over, but we don't want to do that. That's cheating, and you're not really representing the data properly. Plus, it's not going to be flexible if you get a negative number in there. So what you can do is format here, and we're going to format this number here. We've got it in K. The first step is to click and customize the number format. You can't just go from automatic to doing the trick. I'll show you the trick in a minute. You have to first customize it. So we're going to customize it just like I had it before. And we're going to set it to K. All right. It looks exactly like it did before. We still have that 0 marker. But if I come to custom, you're going to see this format. If you look closer, you'll see a semicolon here. Some gobbledygook here, some more gobbledygook here, but it's separated by a semicolon. What the semicolon is separating is positive numbers and negative numbers. In fact, if you look at these, it's a little bit small. You can see that these are identical, except for the negative number has a negative in front of it. Well, what you can't see here is that you can add another semicolon to format the 0 value. So if I press semicolon and then just type Ken, since Ken's a big 0, we can format the 0 to be Ken. We can format the 0 to be computer is running a little bit slow. We can format the 0 to be a dash. What I like to do is just hit semicolon space and you get rid of the 0. So I'll show you that again real quick. You go format. Again, if I went straight to custom, you don't have the custom options. They're not there. So you have to first customize it. So you come pick some custom format, then go to custom, and then semicolon space, and you can get rid of the 0. Now this trick is really handy with a lot of different charts. So we may create, let me pop another cough drop so I don't cough in your guys' ears. We may create a diverging bar chart. Let's say that the green is women and the purple is men. And we're just measuring percentages that answered some survey question. And how we typically build this chart is to literally just put a negative sign in front of one of them so the bar goes to the left. So you got bars going to the right, positive, you got bars going to the left, and we can create this really simple diverging bar chart. If we want to show an axis, which a lot of people like showing an axis versus a direct label in a bar, if we want to show an axis, well, we're showing negatives. That doesn't make any sense. It's not, there's no such thing as a negative percentage of people that responded to a survey question. So we can trick this formatting the same way. So if we go to format, you come here, we've already set it to a custom percentage. So if I come to custom, what we have here is only the positive values. There's no format in here for whatever reason for the negative values. So if I hit colon space, what's going to happen? They're going to disappear completely. But if I just replicate the positive format after the semicolon, then we can trick this into showing positive numbers on a negative axis. So a really nice way to do a diverging bar chart and trick Tableau into displaying it the way we want it to display. All right, in my business, we almost never use actual maps. You know, we don't tend to have much interest in geography, and that's would be for me the only reason I would use a map would be for geography. But we do care about the individual states, so we tend to use hex maps almost exclusively when we do any sort of map. So the kind of the typical way of doing a hex map, I think most people have done this before. We'll go to our data source. Tableau is running quite slow. And we've got this main data source. And so I might add a data source, and then I'd either go grab a shape file. What I like to use is a Excel spreadsheet. This was originally developed by Matt Chambers. And basically all it is a state, an abbreviation, and then a column and row. So we have a column and row, and we can effectively create a scatter plot to create a hex map. So then we would just join this to our data. We join on state, and we'd have the hex coordinates. But I always said, why do we do this join? Why do I have to do this extra join for to bring in these coordinates? And truth is, you don't have to do that at all. If my thing will work, I just create a really simple case statement. It's long. It's 50 rows long, but we just got a case statement that says case on the state abbreviation when Alaska, then give me this coordinate, just like the spreadsheet does. So I've got this all built in here. I have this in a file. I have this in a temp file that I just opened, copy these calculations, put them into Tableau, and then I can create a hex map without even joining to my data. Really, really nice. Now you look at this big long case statement and people say, well, this probably took you an eternity to type when, quote, AK, quote, then. No, not really, because I developed a while ago, and you get it from flerlageterms.com, a case statement generator. Sounds a little bit silly, but what that allows me to do is quickly build case statements. So I have all this data already. I have these values in the spreadsheet already. What I can do is say, let's say I wanted to create this column case statement. I'm only going to pick part of it. I can copy these. I can paste it here, get rid of the stuff I don't want, change this to whatever it is, state. And what this case statement generator does is develop the case statement for you. All you have to do is plug in some values and it'll write all the syntax for you. So you can check that out from our website. Huge time saver. I use it all the time. Used it for this hex map thing. And it's just a nice tool to have in the toolbox. All right, so this is something that I run across a lot of times. It's a little bit dark on the screen, but I always call this this spaghetti mess. It's hard to know how to handle these things. What this is sales by month, but I've broken it out by state. So oftentimes what we all do is we create a parameter and allow our users to select a state so that we can kind of see what the trend is compared to all the other states. So we can show all the states on the screen. We can kind of see some trending, but then we can highlight a certain state. So how we do that? First, we would create a parameter. And what do we call it? State parameter. I can't spell, I'm not going to worry about it. Change it to a string. Then we go to lists, and maybe we want to fill it out by sample superstore state. And now we have this list. Well, you don't have to do all that. All you have to do is find state, right click, create parameter, and you have a pre-populated list of parameters, parameter with all those states in there. And it sets all the string values and all that. So you don't have to go through all that hardship. I've already done that. So I have the state parameter up here. And as you know, by itself does absolutely nothing. We have to create a calculation to make it do something. So I created not this one. That is not the one I want at all. State highlight. All it is saying when the state parameter equals the state, so the state parameter here equals the state in our view, it's going to be true. So if I put that on color and I set the red to be true and the gray to be false, then I can just pick a state and it's going to highlight that, right? So this isn't any sort of tip or trick. This is just kind of setting up how we might use this chart, right? So what if we have something like this? We have that same chart here below, but we have the aggregate values above. So we have this over time by month, and then we have the gray dark. And what I really want to do is not use this state selector. We have the values right here. All I want to do is click on this chart and have it highlight here and highlight in this chart. Happen when I click on a bar and it turned white. We'll address that later with what I always call my favorite tip ever. So we'll fix that, but let's use a parameter action to allow me to click on here and change the color in both charts. So first I'm going to take that same color calculation and drop it there, and we'll come back here. All right, so now we have, I'm going to show this parameter just so we can see what's happening in the state. So now we have New York selected. So if I pick another, well, I must have some weird floating stuff covering it. We won't worry about that. But so we'll set, we want to be able to where I click on this, it'll send that to the parameter. It'll change these values, right? So we can go to dashboard actions, change parameter for that bar chart. We're going to affect the state parameter, and we're going to feed in the state value, right? Okay, and we got set it on select. So now when I click on a bar, California, it's going to change that calculation, sends California to this parameter. It's going to use that calculation to highlight California and then highlight California in this chart, right? What if, and I can click on anywhere and it's going to do that same thing and feed in. What if I don't want anything highlighted? How do I do that with a parameter action? Well, in 2020.3, they updated parameter actions to where you can actually clear them. If you didn't know this exists, down here, if you're using 2020.3 or later, you have this ability to clear the selection. So right now it's set to keep the current value. So if I were to click outside of Texas, it's going to keep Texas. But if we set it to set the value to something else, I'm pretty sure there's no state named that, and that'll never be a true statement. So if we hit this and hit OK, I can now select outside of that state. I think. And let's try this again. This was acting a little quirky for me. Maybe I did something wrong. All right, let's try this again. Looks right. Well, it's literally not working. Well, what it should do is clear that parameter action. And I'm not really sure why. I did this 30 times in practice and it is not wanting to clear it. So let's try it one more time. Test. Click on this. Now click outside of it. And I can't get it to work. So my apologies on that. All right, so we will skip that and we will come back to this weird highlighting thing that I kept talking about. So as I click this, it's highlighting, what it's doing is highlighting, it's using its default highlighting in Tableau. If you're on a white background, these would be gray, but when you're on a black background, that gray looks really, really white. We can use a trick to get rid of that. I use this in pretty much every dashboard that I create. And I call this a fake highlight. Fake highlight is the simplest calculation you ever write. It's just 2 quotes. Again, it could be kind of like before, that didn't work. It can be just about anything. You can put anything in quotes. And then what I'm going to do is add this fake highlight to the detail card. It's actually already on there. So I will come back to this. And then what I'm going to do is create a highlight action on that chart. So I want the source sheet to be that bar chart, the target sheet to be that bar chart. I'm going to go to selected, and then I'm going to collect this fake highlight and set it on select. Now, when I click on these bars, you don't have that weird highlighting happening. It gets rid of that highlighting altogether. So you can kind of make Tableau do what you want it to do. I'm still questioning why that clearing parameter action is not working, but I'll figure it out and let you guys know. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a breather. That's the speed tipping part. I only screwed up one thing, and I'm going to figure out why. And the next section of this is the tips you never saw coming. That never saw is in yellow, and you're probably wondering why it's so prominent. Well, really clear, because they're invisible. And you're probably going like, what's he talking about now, right? Transparent shape. Well, you still might not know what the heck I'm talking about. So first off, come on, I got the kid, the passerbys again. Transparent shape. So before I show you what it is, I'm going to tell you that it's incredibly versatile. I use them in every single visualization I create, work dashboards, personal dashboards, and it really allows you to trick Tableau in a bunch of different ways. And most people don't use them, probably because it's just, why would you? So what's a transparent shape? Let me escape out of this, and I'm going to show you what a transparent shape is by drawing a shape in PowerPoint. So I've got a square here. It's a yellow square, right? And if I come up here to shape color and say no fill, now we have this transparent fill, but we still have this outline. If I go to outline and go no outline, the shape has disappeared. Well, the shape's actually still there. If I select it, the shape's there. And if I right click and save as, I can save this as a picture. This is what we're going to use in Tableau. I'm going to save this into my shapes repository, and I'm going to use this shape to do all kinds of cool things in Tableau. All right, so let's get to it. So I have a problem with everybody being in the way, but we'll deal with that. Let's click over here to get, all right, some space. All right, so the first really simple technique is the application of this transparent shape is to get rid of this ABC in a text crosstab, right? So you just got this crosstab that's made of dimensions, category, subcategory, manufacturer, and if you don't have anything on the text card, you have this ABC thing. Jeff Schaefer, my boss, wrote a blog post on 6 different ways of doing this, and he's got a really cool, what we call the Tableau cheat code. It's like the, if anybody's old enough to play the game Contra, up, up, down, down, left, right, F, A, B, select star, whatever it is. It's kind of like that because it's really crazy, so you should check it out. But my favorite way to get rid of this ABC is transparent shape. First off, how do people usually do it? Well, maybe they'll set it to a polygon. That's a great trick. It'll disappear immediately. What's the problem with the polygon? Well, if you're using any newer versions of Tableau, Tableau won't animate polygons. I love animations. I love the transition between charts. But if you have any polygons on your dashboard, they won't animate. The whole thing won't animate. So I don't use this trick anymore. People might change it to, say, a circle, size it down all the way, change the color to the opacity all the way down, but you still have this little weird thing that you can pick. Okay, that drives me crazy, right? So let's bring that back up just so we can see it. We could say put something on the text card, maybe open quote and a close quote, and then we'll put that on the text card, right? And change this to where's text? Text. But we still have this weird thing where you can select it. I know I'm really getting particular here, but just to kind of show the powers of this transparent shape, all I need to do is change this to a shape, not a circle. Shape. I'm going to choose more shapes. And you can see from my shapes repository, I like, well, there they are. I have this full list of transparent shapes. You can't see them, but you can see that I've got them in here. So if I pick this and assign a transparent shape, this disappears. But what's great is transparent shape can't be selected. You can hover over it, but there's no selection, there's no circle, there's no weirdness about it. So this is kind of our first step of understanding how these things can be powerful. So here's a chart that I create at work. A really, really common chart that I create at work. It is a chart that shows lift. So we have a group of accounts and we've got these models that help us kind of target which accounts are better than others, where we'll make more revenue than we would on others. So this is just a random line. So if we randomly selected accounts, we'd expect that, say, 30%, we get 30% of the profit. 30% of the accounts would yield 30% of the profit on average, right? Well, this other curve is showing my lift using these different algorithms, right? So we start off with a chart that looks like this, but we really want to call out just one percentage. We want to focus our users' attention on, say, 30%. And we do this in brochures and all kinds of information. So we start off with this chart. So how I might do this is say, okay, maybe I need to write a calculation that says if the percentage of accounts is 0.3 or 30%, then give me the sum of profit, else null, right? And then I'll put this up on my dual axis and I'll synchronize it. And then I'll change that to a circle shape. I don't even do that stuff anymore. I just use a simple transparent shape. So I'm going to go to this second axis. So one axis is a line. The second axis is a circle. I'm going to change that circle to a shape. I'm going to put this percentage of accounts onto shape. Then I'm going to come in here. They're all circles right now. For some reason, this thing has resorted my shape repository. I'm going to pick everything but the 0.3 and set it to a transparent shape. That shape exists, it's just now transparent. So instead of doing these extra calculations and putting something different on my dual axis, the only thing I have to do without a calculation is drag the percentage of accounts on shape and change the shape. The same thing could be applied to a chart where you just want to notate the max point, the last point on here. So we might just have a simple calculation that's, if you were going to do this, you might say, if the date trunk of the order date equals the fixed max of the order date, then give me the sales else, end, which is essentially an else null. You might do something similar, or we can just say, we can just make this a true false instead. And similarly to before, we can change this to a shape. This is a true false. We'll drop that there. The falses we will turn to, guess what? Transparent shape. And the trues will change to a filled circle. Now we have this chart with just the last point marked. So a lot quicker, a lot easier than writing these calculations and use them on a dual axis. This is something I learned from Josh Chapley. This is the guy who did that Cerebro where he was showing the top favorited authors on Tableau Public. So when I'm creating bands, I always hated the fact that I could pick this band and it would turn this weird blue color, right? I don't want that. Sometimes I want my, sometimes I would float a blank over top of this to not allow my users to select it. But sometimes you want these things to be interactive. You want them to be able to select it. Maybe there's a parameter action or some sort of action that occurs when you click on the band. Well, this is really easy to get rid of using a transparent shape. I'm going to duplicate this for now. So how we've created these bands is I'm just using measure names and measure values, right? And I've got the measure value on the text and the measure name on text, right? And then measure values is large, measure names is small. So it's using the text mark. So what we can do is change this shape, change it to a shape mark. You're going to see this circle shape. If I change this to a transparent shape, hit OK. We don't have to do anything more. And now we click on this. We don't have that weird blue highlighting. It highlights, which is something I like, but it doesn't have that weird blue highlighting. If you want it to be a color, and I've seen people ask this question before, then all you have to do on your label is you have to first set the color on the transparent shape that you can't see, and then you set your color to match the mark color. So you can see the difference between this and this, just a lot cleaner view. And you allow interactivity as well without that super weird blue highlighting. This is a chart that I saw on the forums. Somebody said, okay, how do I create this? It's a bar chart showing by month, showing 2017 and 2018. And then they wanted a circle to show the percent change over month over month, right? So from January 2017 to January 2018. So percent change is 137. Well, if I put the circle mark here, the circle mark's going to show on both bars, right? So another simple trick is I'm using a transparent shape on the lower of the 2 years and a circle on the higher of 2 years, right? So another great use case for a transparent shape. This one comes from a fellow Zen master, Luke Stanky, who runs the company Tessellation, who's hiring the whole entire world, by the way. So I think they're hiring now if anybody's interested. He has this use case where he's looking at the sales by subcategory, right? But he's also ranking the positioning, the change from year to year where these stood. So last year, this particular one was ranked number 2. It's now ranked number 1, so it's moved up 1 spot. So it's a little bit hard to see with just numbers. These red numbers, this one went down 1 spot, this one went up 1 spot, this one went up 3 spots. So we had some shapes here. Okay, so red starts to make sense. Down for bad for red, good for blue. But then he has these sort of neutral figures, ones that nothing happened with. Well, another simple solution for a transparent shape. So maybe we set this -1 here to this value, and then we set this transparent shape for the ones that don't move. And now we have this really clean chart. No mark, didn't move. This one moved up 3, this one moved down 1. So far I've talked just about how we use transparent shapes. You can also use transparent images for all kinds of cool things in Tableau. So these would be things that aren't in the shapes repository. So you can do all kinds of things with that as well. So if you had some text, you may know that if you have text and you build a hyperlink and you can click on that hyperlink, it turns a hyperlink typed out with a https:// into a true clickable hyperlink. Most of the time you don't want to do that. What if you wanted to just link to Tableau software and you didn't want to type out https:// www.tableau.com, right? You might just want to embed it right there in the text. Well, that doesn't turn into any sort of hyperlink, right? All I've done is create text that is underlined in blue. We can use a transparent shape to actually turn this into a hyperlink. So I'm going to change this to floating, and I'm going to grab this image and I'm going to drag it out on top of this here. Then I'm going to go choose. I'm going to use the stuff from my transparent, from my shapes repository, but you don't really have to. I'm just going to pick one of these transparent shapes. But then I'm going to set a target URL, https://tableau.com. Let's see if I typed it right. Hit OK. Now we have this floating transparent shape with a target URL over your text. And if I click on that, I've essentially created a hyperlink. Really simple technique to create, in-text hyperlinks. This is a table of contents. This is a dashboard that I created for work that we have on our work Tableau public page. It's called Recovery to Decision Science. This is really a breakdown of the whole unemployment landscape. And I created this back in April when, the COVID thing kind of broke loose. And the goal was track unemployment over the course of time and in lots of different ways. And as I really dug in this data, we had 18 different dashboards. So this is available on Tableau Public, 18 different dashboards. And I created, to navigate this dashboard, this workbook, these buttons. And this is a sort of a table of contents using buttons. These are images. And then I use a navigation button. If you're not familiar how those work, you can just drag a navigation button to move from one dashboard to another. But these are static images that I created back in April. So if you actually kind of look, it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see this spike of unemployment happened in April 2020. Well, we're now in May 2021. This chart has changed dramatically. So some of the feedback I've got on this is why, it could be deceiving to show these charts that are snapshots from a year ago. Well, we can do the same sort of concept of a table of contents, and we can make it dynamic. We can essentially bring in individual sheets that represent a dashboard. So this is just a sheet. I've kind of formatted it a little bit better to fit the small window here. But I have these sheets here, and what I want to be able to do is allow the user to click on the sheet. Remember, this sheet will be dynamic with the data, so this is a true dynamic table of contents. And I want somebody to be able to click on this and go to that dashboard. Well, just click on a sheet's not going to do that. What we can do is we can drag in this navigation button right on top of the sheet, so we can't even see it. Probably guessed by now what I'm going to do. I'm going to have it navigate to, what is this called? I'll have to jump out of that real quick and see what I'm navigating to. 8 TOC. So we're going to navigate to 8 TOC, page 1, great naming. Go to image. We're going to change that to an image button. I'm going to pick one of these transparent shapes. And now we have this dynamic sheet that's going to update with our data, but I can also click on it and go to the actual dashboard. So we actually do this at work on several different dashboards where we have 5 or 6 different sheets with these buttons layered on top of it. And it creates this really slick dynamic table of contents that updates with your data. This is actually the cover page for this blog post I have on my website about transparent shapes and images. I wanted to have something that kind of looked cool. So this is sort of another little table of contents. And I could have created these different shapes, a different shape for each button I wanted to create. But instead, what I just did was create this one image. And I like to create images in PowerPoint, but you could have done it in Illustrator or something like that. So this is one big image. And I actually just have buttons floating on top of them. So I did that exact table of contents technique in the blog post I wrote about transparent shapes and images. Another little use case for transparent shapes and images, this is a little table public viz I did, and I wanted to have a how to read section. So if you aren't familiar with collapsible containers, they're absolutely phenomenal. Allow you to click a button and open a container. And Tableau is running, like I said, a little bit slow, but there's that container. But what happens with these buttons is they always stay in the same place. You might see what I've done is I've tricked this button to where I put, because I didn't want this button to be on top of the text. I want it to be here when I click it, and then here when the window comes up. So I've basically just tricked this button. You can see the selected button. All the space is transparent here with this text up top. And then here I've got this text down here and transparency up here. So another way to use transparency to your advantage. I love to use little selectors in my charts to allow people to kind of drill down. So this is a chart just looking at sales over time, looking at sales over a year. So we can say collect the 2017 button to filter by 2017. It filters the chart. What happens is some weird stuff. First off, you see that weird highlight that I talked about with my fake highlight trick. And that doesn't work really well. And you also see this really weird highlighting that Tableau does, or outlining. And I think it's really just a kind of a poor user experience. It just doesn't look very good. So I tend to use transparent shapes to fix that. So how does that work? Well, when I showed you the ABC, the very first transparent trick, I showed you that those transparent shapes can't be selected. So what I do is I tend to do this layering technique. I have the shapes behind here. I'm using parameter actions to do some highlighting and some filtering and things. But then I have I've duplicated this sheet, and instead of using these buttons here, I'm using transparent shapes as buttons. So effectively what's happening is I'm clicking on the transparent shape associated with 2017. It'll highlight that button, top of them. It looks like I'm clicking on the button. And instead of doing that weird highlighting, it has like this, it's got a really nice clean effect. I have a technique that I wrote about 2 years ago called no polygons. It uses a transparent shape. My brother wrote about a scrollable timeline where you can scroll through this. It uses a transparent shape. In March 2020, we had, like I said, I run the Cincinnati Tug. We had like this Tug of the Century planned. We had 9 Tableau Zen Masters that were going to be in town. And because we had 9, one of my colleagues said, we need to create a game. And he called it, he's an old fart like me, he called it Hollywood Squares for Zens. And he called it Zennywood Squares. That Hollywood Squares is an old game show. If you're young and you don't remember it, it's basically tic-tac-toe. You select a person. If you agree with their answer, you get the circle or the X, and you play tic-tac-toe. Well, we wanted to play this game, but we need to have this game interface. So I created this game interface, and there's no data to it. It's just a bunch of transparent, clickable, collapsible containers. So let's say if we wanted to go to Steve Wexler in the center square, I would just pick the square. It would highlight him eventually. It's being really, really slow. Let's just try Ken. So it highlights Ken. So now we're asking Ken a question. If I get it right, I got another little button down here to give 0 the square. And let's see if we click on me and we give X the square. right? So this is just a bunch of different transparent shapes. And I wanted to be, and the reason I did transparent shapes is I wanted to be really, really clean. I didn't want it to have zeros and X's and all these little buttons every which way you look. I just wanted it to be really, really clean. So you can make games out of it. On my Tableau public profile, I recently shared what I call the data fam finder. The intention is for us to be able to connect with people in our areas. You can register your name for it, and then you'll pop up as a mark here where you're located. You don't have to put your exact address, just general geo Latin longs. And the idea is I could say, well, I'm going to travel to, you guys are in Texas. I'm going to travel somewhere in Texas. I can click on Texas. It creates this buffer calculation, and it gives me a list of people that are in Texas. This doesn't work in desktop. It works on publish. You can click this button. I can download this list, and I can connect with people in this area, right? Well, you might say, well, when I click on a map, I really need a mark to click on. So it's, for example, here, if I wanted to say click somewhere in Russia, see, I want to click somewhere in Russia, I'm clicking, nothing's happening. How am I creating this sort of buffer calculation without a mark to click on? Well, I've tricked Tableau in this instance. So this is one where I haven't tricked it, and you can tell when I'm double clicking, I can't click anywhere. But what I've done is I've brought in a list of, I think, 27,000 cities in the world that all had Latin long coordinates with it. And for those that aren't registered people, they don't have a registered person with it, I've used a transparent shape. So out here have all different transparent shapes associated with it. In fact, if I change this transparent shape to, say, the star, you'll see these transparent shapes all over the place. Okay. But what that allows me to do is basically hover anywhere on the map and click. And when I do so, that is causing the two parameter actions. It's feeding a Latin long into a parameter that allows me to create this buffer calculation. So by using 26,000 transparent shapes, this allows me to click anywhere on the map and see who is in my area, whether or not somebody already exists in there anyways. So that's probably my most exhaustive use of transparent shapes. All right, so there you have it. That is all about the tips you never saw, and I am happy to take any questions. Just so you know, the tips themselves are kind of scattered all over the place, but the transparent shape tips are on this blog post on our website, flerlagetwins.com. You go to flerlagetwins.com and just search for transparent shapes and you'll find it. And I did want to just make a quick shout out. There's lots of people I probably missed, but the specific tips came from certain people on here. And I do want to just mention one thing. My favorite tip ever, the fake highlight thing, comes from Brian Moore. Absolutely love that tip. So happy to take questions if everybody has them.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. If you guys can help give me a round of applause for Kevin, that was phenomenal. I think we have time for maybe one or two quick questions. If you want to throw them up in the chat, I'm just going to pick one or two, and then we're going to move into our breakout sessions. But a quick reminder, this session is recorded. So the recording will be sent to you in the next day or so, and it's also going to be uploaded on the Tableau YouTube. So don't worry, if you want to go back and watch something, you can later. Let me quickly scan the chat here and see if there's any questions, Kevin. You're getting lots of great feedback and support in the chat.
Great.
One question is, seems like these transparent image tricks would require a static dashboard size. Is that generally a best practice as opposed to using the automatic sizing or size ranges?
I'll be honest, I've had so many problems with the automatic sizing that I literally never use it. So I can't answer the question whether whether these transparent shapes would have an impact on the automatic, because I don't use automatic, just because I want to control what my dashboard looks like. So I don't ever use automatic, so can't really answer that question. I apologize.
Awesome. And then another question, is there a performance improvement with in over case?
I'm not sure. That's an excellent question. You guys, you got to have some softballs here, Rachel. I can actually answer. I honestly don't know. I would think if there is, it's probably very minimal. For me, it's more about just the ease of the syntax, the consistency with SQL. I mean, it's really just less typing, and I always prefer if there's a shortcut to do something that I'd rather do it. If I don't have to replicate when and then every single time, then I would prefer to do it, especially if that there's a long list. So performance, I'm not really sure. I would think it's fairly minimal either way.
Sure. And then one last question. This is more for fun. Are you teaching your kids your Tableau tips and tricks?
My son is 14. He is a math whiz, which makes me really, really proud. My daughter's 11. And she's really smart too. And I can't get either of them interested in this stuff. They'll occasionally look at a Tableau public dashboard, but my son had a solar system project recently, and I begged him to do it in Tableau because I said everybody's going to have painted styrofoam balls. Nobody will have an interactive data visualization built in Tableau. You wow your teacher, and he refused. So I'm trying, but I can't get him there quite yet. So.
Well, awesome. That is all the questions we can take for now, but thank you again, Kevin. That was amazing. And thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.